What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Grimlock video. If this is your first time viewing the channel, please make sure to hit that sub button and like. It helps my channel grow substantially. Also, if you do enjoy the content, you can leave a comment down below. I make sure to respond to every single one of you guys within 24 hours most of the time. I love talking with you guys. I have a Discord, and I also stream as well, so make sure to check those out as well. I'll have the link to the stream kind of written in the video as well as in the description below, so check that out. I stream 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday, and Sundays sometimes. But Tuesday and Thursdays are like a definite. But yeah, let's get into this PvP tier list. Things have changed a lot in 10.1.7. There's not been a lot of PvP changes per se, but there's a lot of shifts in the meta in itself because of the changes that did happen. So yeah, let's get right into it, guys. Alrighty, guys, so looking at our tier list, we have S tier, A plus tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and garbage tier. Now, these tiers are just to determine what specs I believe are the best and worst. Obviously, you know how the tier list thing works. But something that I want to note, and something that's been pointed out a lot in other streamers and other videos, in the comments, is a lot of people are saying, well, this tier list may apply to, you know, a gladiator or rank 1 player, but for the average player, you know, like a 14 to 1800 player, anywhere in that range, you know, this doesn't apply to me. This spec seems way too broken, or this spec seems way too broken. So I just want to kind of clarify that, and as we go through this video, I'm going to kind of tell you guys what I think of the spec and how I think the skill ceiling actually applies to each and every spec as we go. So yeah, this might be a long video, but we're gonna make it happen. So we're gonna start with we're actually gonna start placing the tanks. Now, a lot of people place tanks just straight in garbage tier, which I agree. I think if you're playing a tank in PvP, I don't know why you would do that. But then again, you know, everybody kind of has a thing. You know, sometimes people just really like playing tanks, and that's okay. I get it. RBGs exist for a reason. So I'm going to place the tanks in an actual tier this time. And so we're going to go over Vengeance Demon Hunter. So Vengeance Demon Hunter, in my opinion, is the meta pick for RBGs. If you plan on playing solo shuffle in arenas, I think Vengeance is probably like, I would say it's probably like C tier, legitimately, in arenas, but in RBGs it's S tier, okay? So for right now, we're going to place it in C tier, just because I'm going to make this tier list mainly around solo shuffle and arenas, but just so you guys know, in RBGs, I would consider Vengeance an S tier class, for sure. We're going to go over Guardian Druid here. Guardian Druid's also a pretty good tank. I am going to place it in C tier, though, because it's significantly worse than Vengeance Demon Hunter in RBGs because it can't keep up with it. It is kind of tanky, but it has less... I don't know how to describe it. I don't think Guardian Druid is as good as some people think it is. It does do pretty good damage, though, surprisingly, with Thrash spam and stuff like that. It's really simple to do damage on Guardian Druid, but I'm going to put it in C tier. Just for specifics right now. So we have Prot Paladin. Now, Prot Paladin is a tank spec that can do a lot of damage, or it can spec itself to do a lot of healing. So it can be kind of either or, which is why in solo shuffle, when you queue as a Prot Paladin, you actually get placed in the healer role. You would place your healer, whereas the other tank specs replace the DPS. So Prot Paladins fight against other Prot Paladins and only other Prot Paladins in solo shuffle. So I think with that being said, Prot Paladin is kind of a rare case in itself. It's kind of like if you took an Augvoker and made it do way less damage but gave it way more survivability. Kind of. It's a little bit worse than Augvoker. Well, it's a lot bit worse than Augvoker. But yeah, so I'm going to put Prot Pally actually in like A tier. I really do think Prot Pally has a chance if you play like something like Prot Pally Warrior right now. If you played something like Prot Pally Warrior Resto Druid or Prot Pally Warrior Holy Priest or something like that, I actually don't think you'd have a problem pushing. And I know that sounds really lame, but yeah, that is a legitimate thing. So yeah, I think Prot Pally is actually good, as sucky as that is. But yeah, I'm going to just place it in A. I think a lot of people underestimate Prot Pallies. I've played against the best Prot Paladin in solo shuffle in North America, in my opinion, which his name is El Master. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel, so if you want to check that out, you can check that out right in the old channel there. Go check it out. But yeah, I have a game versus him. He's pretty good, but you know, it's a Prot Pally game, so it's kind of a cluster anyways. But yeah, Prot Pallies are actually not bad. I do think Blood DK is the worst out of all the tanks. Maybe Prot Warrior, but Blood DK is just terrible, man. It's actually horrible. I won't go into too much detail, but its defensives don't save its life nearly as much as the other tank specs. Like, it has no way to mitigate damage nearly as much, at least in PvP. Now, I don't know for PvE. I don't do any PvE content. I'm just purely a PvP Paul, as Blizzard likes to call us. So, yeah, Blood DK is trash. I'm going to say Prot Warrior is also trash. Now, Prot Warrior does have some really cool talents, I will say. They have something called Shield Charge, which is really good. It's a pretty long stun. They also have a Heroic Leap stun in their PvP talents, which is pretty crazy because you can AoE stun. It's kind of like a shockwave, so you can actually do quite a bit of damage if you're playing something like Unholy DK Prot Warrior. Now, the problem is like, who's going to play that over, like, Unholy DK Arms Warrior, right? Like, you shouldn't do that, really. Like, you're gonna nerf yourself. So, but to be legitimate, it is okay. I'm actually gonna place it above Blood DK for sure. Now, Blood DK, I will give Blood DK a little bit of hope. Blood DK does have a lot of interruption in the sense that it has a lot of death grips. It's the only tank spec with a range kick, kind of. I mean, technically Guardian Druid has a range kick as well. I guess Vengeance Demon Hunter does too, but Blood DK's is the furthest range, right? So, yeah, that's kind of good. It also has a silence. So, yeah, there is winning things for Blood DK, but it's just nowhere near the other tank specs, in my opinion, at least in PvP. Then we got Brewmaster here. Now, Brewmaster, I actually think is probably like B tier. The reason being is there is a build where you play Bone Dust Brew, and you line up, I forget what it's called, but there's this form of damage that you can do where, I think it's after like 10 auto attacks, your next Rising Sun kick does double the damage. Something disgusting like that. So when you have Bone Dust Brew, if you proc it and you crit with that Rising Sun kick, you actually can do like 300k in a single global, which is pretty crazy. It's pretty disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're thinking about playing like a high DPS tank spec, I don't know why you would, but yeah, I would try out Brewmaster. But yeah. So that's our tank specs. I'm not going to touch them ever again. But yeah, just to give you guys an idea, the tank specs aren't always lowest tier. Okay? They're not terrible. Now, in rank 1 gameplay, you will never see tanks. Okay? I will tell you that right now because they will abuse you. Tanks, I mean, you will see one tank, maybe. That could be really good. Shout out to that Prot Warrior back in Shadowlands. I won't even name you, but you know who you are. But yeah, so going over the rest of the tier list now, we're going to start with Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, Havoc Demon Hunter, not this patch, but the patch prior, got some pretty significant buffs to its eye beam. Now, I'm surprised I haven't seen a lot of Havoc Demon Hunters because they're actually pretty disgusting. I'm going to place them in A+ tier for now. I do think they are pretty squishy, but they have so much leech and they do so much damage that they kind of mitigate the squishiness with the amount of healing they do. The problem is the further you go into dampening, the way worse your spec gets, right? Because you're relying on leech so much that if the game lasts more than like 2-3 minutes, you're pretty much in dire straits. You're pretty much going to lose. Now, to be fair, the way Demon Hunters play, the games really shouldn't last more than 2 to 3 minutes. So, you know, that is kind of how it is. You either kill or be killed. It's kind of like playing a really squishy version of like Ret Warrior or something is playing like DK, something like that. Yeah, so that's Demon Hunter. I think Demon Hunter plays well with a lot of the top specs as well. So that's something to think of and consider. But you still can die 100 to 0 in a stun as a Demon Hunter, and there's nothing you can do about it besides like preemptively Darkness or preemptively Blur or preemptively Netherwalk. So yeah, Demon Hunter is not bad. It's pretty solid right now. I would consider it A+, but it's probably low A+ as we go along this list. BM Hunter, pretty crazy good. It has a lot of defensives in the sense that it has Roar of Sacrifice, it has Survival of the Fittest, Aspect of the Turtle. It's got a Freedom. It also has Feign Death, which is disgusting right now because there's a lot of dot classes in the game, and you can get rid of all those, which is really nice. It has just a lot of utility. Has Trap on a 30-second cooldown, technically a 24-second cooldown, I think, or 26, something like that, if you get the right talents. So BM's pretty good. I would say BM Hunter belongs, I would say A tier. I don't think it's as good as Havoc Demon Hunter right now. I do think it's pretty solid, though, and with the right composition, it's disgusting. So, like, I think, like, if you play BM Hunter Cupid Cleave, you're not going to struggle a lot. I think it's pretty good. You definitely have the potential to outlive a lot of classes. Now, I do think versus like something like Unholy DK Affliction Lock or Boomy Affliction Lock or something like that, you're probably going to struggle, to be quite honest. But BM Hunter can melt clothies pretty good. So I think if you are fighting like something caster heavy, just go the squishiest armor class, which is like I like how I said armor class like this is D&D, but I definitely go the squishiest class like the warlock or something like that, and you'll have no problem. Survival Hunter, I actually think Survival Hunter is really low key good. I think it's under BM, only because it's harder to play, in my opinion. But I think at the highest tier, like if you're a rank 1 player, I swear Survival is better than BM. And the only reason I say this is because if you line up your damage really well, and you know how to play Survival, look up Bikmex, he's insane. You can actually just outplay your opponents all game long. It's crazy how much skill Survival takes compared to the other specs of Hunter, but it does so much damage in short windows of time, so it plays really well with things like Sub Rogue, which is why Bikmex plays Thug Cleave a lot of times. It plays really well with Feral, like Jungle Cleave. I've seen some Survival Cupid Cleaves. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it's probably the worst composition for Survival, because I think Cupid works really well with BM Hunter, but either way, Survival's really good. So I think at a rank 1 level, you could see Survival maybe even in the A+ tier, but I think at a 1400 level, you're probably talking like B tier, because it's maybe even C tier, because it's so hard. You have to really know your abilities, how to line up your procs, use explosive shot, and then line up your kill shot proc, so at the same time your explosive shot explodes with the kill shot, so you're doing like 250k damage in a single global like that. Stuff like that, lining up those procs all the time, it takes time and it takes skill, it takes practice. So I think Survival, we'll put them in A tier for right now. Marksmanship, pretty crazy good. High burst right now, super hard to deal with if you don't have a disarm or a consistent stun. And Marksman is like the answer right now to Arcane Mage, in my opinion. I think if you're playing Marksmanship, you can actually win versus Arcane Mage, which Arcane Mage is really good versus a lot of things, like a lot of melee cleaves, which Marksman tends to play with melee cleaves, like KFC, Unholy DK Marksman, Cupid Cleave Marksman, Thug Cleave Marksman, maybe even Beast Cleave Marksman, which is Enhancement Shaman for those that haven't played that long. I think Marksman's probably the answer to Arcane Mage for a lot of specializations. So I'm actually going to put Marksman above the other two specs. But I do think Hunters stay pretty grouped skill-wise and tier-wise. Right now, I feel like they're all actually pretty balanced. I do think a lower level, so if you're a 1400 Marksmanship and you're versus a 1400 Survival, I think the Marksmanship would destroy the Survival Hunter like 9 times out of 10. And that's probably because it's so much easier to just line up damage. All you have to do is just like aim shot into rapid fire or sniper shot into rapid fire, out of stealth. Like you can do all this stuff like pretty free as a Marksmanship Hunter at low rating. At high rating, it's a lot harder as Marksmanship to get off your damage because people are training you. They're interrupting your aim shots with knockbacks. They're interrupting it with stuns. They're interrupting it with disarms. So a lot of your high burst damage is getting interrupted frequently. Or people are just line of sighting you more. A lot of people in lower tier rating don't really position themselves well, so they'll be out in the middle of the open, and Marksmanships thrive on that kind of stuff. They'll just pick you apart, and there's nothing you can do. It's actually unhealable damage. So you have to sit on a pillar versus Marksmanship Hunters. But yeah, so I'm going to place all the Hunter specs in A tier. Moving on to Druids, we got Feral Druid here. Now, Feral Druid is, it's okay. I think it's good with the right classes. I think Feral Druid Mage is super underrated right now. Aegis actually plays it at a very high level. He's really good. I mean, Aegis is the mage, I will say that, but FMP is pretty solid. So I will say Feral, I think I'm going to place it above Paladin for sure. But I think it's A tier. I don't think it's anything other than A tier. It's definitely worse than Hunter, in my opinion. I think Hunter plays well with other classes better. Feral Druid kind of locks itself into, like, Feral Warrior, which is Kitty Cleaver, or even, like, Feral Death Knight, which is Ebola Cleave, or, like, Feral Mage, which is FMP. Like, it locks itself into specific comps, whereas, like, Hunter actually has a little bit of fluidity, where it can play with classes that it doesn't normally play with. Oh, also, another good comp for Feral is, like, Feral Shadow Priest. Feral Shadow Priest is pretty good right now. I would say so, but I think Boomy Shadow Priest might be better. It depends on what you're fighting against at the time. But yeah, I will say this. Pretty much any composition you can think of, you can probably play right now to like at least 18 to 1900 easily. I mean, I'm talking like, you know, if you wanted to play like, I don't know, something like crazy bad, like something like Boomy Ret or something like that, like something that nobody's ever heard of, like Boomkin Ret Paladin. Like you could easily play that comp, I feel like, to 1800, no problem. If you're good, right? So, if you're like a really good player, like a gladiator player, right? Like you can play that to 1800 right now. But I think like so if you're thinking about like metas and stuff like that, and you're watching this video, obviously you're looking at tier lists. You think like, okay, what am I going to play that's like the meta for this patch? If you're struggling at like 1600. It's not going to come down to what composition you're playing. I promise you that. It comes down to how well you're playing your class at that point. So I'm just going to put that right out there and cut that straight. But either way, all right, Boomkin. Boomkins are good. I've fought against a lot of Boomkins. Their burst lasts for a long time. It's a relatively short cooldown. I think it's a 2 or 3 minute cooldown incarnation. I think it's a 2-minute cooldown, which is pretty crazy. But it lasts 30 seconds. So I'm going to place it in A+ tier. It's non-dispellable, their burst, and their burst makes them do a lot more. It increases their critical strike chance. It increases, I think, their haste. And I think it just overall increases their damage because they're constantly in their eclipse. Something like that. I don't play Boomkin that often. I haven't played it actually since, I don't know, at least 5 months ago. So, yeah, at least. Maybe even, dang, dude, we're in September. Probably like 8 months ago at this point. Jeez. Dang, this year's going by quick. But yeah, so Boomkin, I think, is A+ tier. Does a lot of burst. Cyclone is still really good, guys. Root Beam is really good. Root Beam is super annoying to deal with. Honestly, guys, if you want to try something kind of crazy, kind of little on the edge, you can play like Unholy DK, Boomkin, and I swear playing against Caster Cleaves is like so cake because your Death Knight just runs in, right? You kind of play like you're playing with an Augvoker, you just grip into the blind, and then your Boomkin mass entangles into the silence. Nobody can do anything in it. You guys just, you know, the Incarn just sends the orbital strike. I'm getting off topic. Ladies and gentlemen, Boomkin is pretty solid with a bunch of different comps, but yeah, try stuff out. I'm telling you. Boomkin with Aflock though right now, cake. Just play that. You know, you'll do fine. Resto Druid, ladies and gentlemen, we've gotten to the one spec that got changes besides Mistweaver this patch. Resto Druid. We got the Grove Guardians. We got the Treants back, baby, and they are ridiculous. They're crazy. I'm talking 20%, 30% of your heals overall. It's so broken, dude. I'm telling you. And they're off global cooldown, so guess what? If a hunter goes to trap you, boom, treant yourself. Just stand on top of the treant. It will eat your trap. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so strong. You can be in CC for like 10 seconds straight. Your treants are just healing your team. You're just vibing. Doesn't cost a lot of mana because your treants are just healing, so you don't have to be spending mana. Like, I'm telling you right now, guys, it's going to get patched that treants are going to get nerfed. But for right now, as it stands, Resto Druids, I'm going to place them A+ tier. I know this is crazy. This is breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people don't trust in the Resto Druid Dream. They haven't trusted in it. But I'm telling you, it is so good. It is so good. Resto Druid wasn't that bad before. They just didn't change the things that they needed to change. So what they did instead was they were like, oh, I know exactly what Resto Druids need. More burst AoE, more burst healing that's instant cast. No, that's not what Resto Druid needs. It needs Dispel Protection. That actually makes sense. Not this resin garbage. Let's be honest, dude. It doesn't need Grove Guardians. What it needs is a complete rework. Because it's just a weird spec. But right now, it is crazy because of Grove Guardians. So, we're going to leave Resto Druid there. Moving on to Paladin. We're at Holy Paladin. I don't know why this tier list chose this image for Holy Paladin. I don't even know what image this is from. It doesn't look like a Holy... I don't think this is a Holy Paladin ability even. But ladies and gentlemen, we're on Holy Paladin. And Holy Paladin is also, I'm going to say it's S tier. It's pretty impossible to kill Holy Paladin unless if you are playing like Augvoker, DK, Disc, or Holy Priest, and you just grip in, blind, Augvoker flies over the whole team, and then you MD the bubble and kill, right? That's like the one situation where a Holy Paladin can die really easily. Outside of that, Holy Paladin is like... It's so tanky. It has so many cooldowns. It keeps so many classes alive that normally can't stay alive, like mages, like boomkins, like locks. Like, it's so good. I do think Resto Druid lock is better than Holy Paladin lock, though, right now. So, Yeah, Holy Paladin's crazy. Has a lot of defensives. Has a lot of buttons to press. Absolutely disgusting class. Moving on to Ret Paladin. Also has a lot of buttons to press. Not as much because it doesn't have two charge. Does Ret Paladin have two charges of bop? I don't think so. I think it has one charge of bop. I think Holy Paladin is the only one with two charges of bop. But either way, Ret Paladin is pretty crazy. It's got lay on hands. It's got bop. It's got bubble. It has hand of sacrifice. Disgusting. 1 minute cooldown shield wall you can give to your teammate. Gross. Gross, guys. Crazy. And it has one of the highest bursts in the game. Definitely going to put this in A+ tier. I don't think it's as good as Boomkin. I think Boomkin absolutely has more versatility than a Ret Paladin, can play with more classes than a Ret Paladin. But if you're playing something like Ret Warrior, you're going to just steamroll people sometimes. I think on average you should be able to just walk in, pop burst. You can Hand of Justice your main target. Hammer of Justice, sorry, not Hand of Justice. Hammer of Justice your main target. Stormbolt the off target, or you can Heroic Leap and Fear, charge back in, burst. You know, just disgusting stuff, ladies. Disgusting. Disgusting. There's so many good comps in the game right now. I'm telling you, just find one you enjoy playing and just crush it, ladies and gentlemen. Crush those games. But yeah, Ret Paladin's really good. Ret Paladin's pretty solid. I forgot to talk about like battlegrounds in this. I'm so sorry. I've been talking so much about arenas. But basically, honestly, this tier list kind of stays the same. I think Balance Druid moves to S tier in battlegrounds because it's just more people to cleave your dots onto. You're just kind of just throwing out big damage. You also have a lot of AoEs with like Starfire and what's the stars? I forgot what the stars are. Starfall? Is it Starfall? It's got to be Starfall. Yeah, so you have a lot of AoE damage anyways. I think Balance Druid's definitely up there. Assassination Rogue just got a decent buff. It got a 5% buff like 2 patches ago or a patch ago, and it's actually not bad. I feel like people are underrating Assassination Rogue heavily. They're like, oh man, this is C tier garbage, but I'm telling you, if you play with the right comp, Assassination Rogue is actually not that bad. The problem is with Holy Paladin being so good, is any Holy Paladin team, the second you put on Deathmark, it's just going to get bopped off and your entire burst is gone. But if you're playing against anything other than Holy Paladin, now that Resto Druid stonks are kind of going up, right? Like Resto Druid stonks are going up, Assassination Rogue stonks are going up now. Because Assassination Rogue works really well with Resto Druid and it works really well against Resto Druid, right? Because there's nothing Resto Druid can do to dispel its dots and you're just vibing. So I actually think because Resto Druid stonks have gone up, some Holy Paladin stonks are coming down because, you know, there's more heal balance a little bit. So I think I'm going to put Assassination Rogue low-key a little under Feral. Little under Feral. What are we thinking about that, ladies and gentlemen? A tier? I'm actually going to drop Pot Pally to B tier. I'm going to drop it to there. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. We'll put it in B tier. It's definitely the worst out of the rogue specs, in my opinion. I think Outlaw, which is coming up next, I think Outlaw is pretty good. Has a lot of damage just passively through its auto attacks. I do think Outlaw, like Mage, Outlaw, there's other things you can play. Like, you can even play Outlaw on Holy DK. You can play Outlaw Shadow Priest. You can play Outlaw Enhancement Shaman. You can play Outlaw Windwalker, which is kind of dumb. You can play Outlaw Destrolock, all that kind of stuff. Outlaw is pretty good right now. It does have pretty good utility. It can stay alive for a really long time. Not as long as Sub-Rogue, in my opinion, but it is pretty good. I think I'm going to place Outlaw in A tier. A+ tier, sorry. Definitely above the Hunter specs. I think it just has so much utility. I think rogues in general have a lot of utility. Oh, that's another thing that's really good about Sin Rogue is it has the Garrote silence. None of the other specs have Garrote silence. And so if you're playing Subterfuge, and versus like a Caster Cleave, you can always just vanish Garrote, and then they're all silenced, and there's nothing they can do that whole time, which is pretty good. It's kind of nice to be able to have that option, because none of the other rogue specs have that option. Yeah, no worries. But yeah, Outlaw Rogue, A+ tier. I think it's a little under Havoc Demon Hunter, though. Now, the real demon of the rogue specs, though, I think is Sub-Rogue, and I'm going to place Sub-Rogue... I'm going to place it in S tier. I think it's the best rogue spec by far. It's pretty disgusting. It has super high burst potential. Nothing's really changed about its survivability at all, which is crazy. It can, you can Cloak of Shadows. You can play the physical Cloak of Shadows as well, where you can just cloak off like Karma. So you can pretty much insta-kill a Windwalker in the opener if you have a very clean opener. which is disgusting. Almost every single game. It's pretty impossible to live it as a Windwalker, personally, as me. I mean, I've lived it, but you can't karma the rogue, which is really annoying. It's really annoying because a lot of times sub-rogues are playing with Holy Paladin, so if you go to karma anything... Anyways, getting off topic, Monk. Anyways, sub-rogue. Sub-rogue is crazy. It's good. It does a lot of burst, has a lot of utility, has a lot of peeling for its teammates. You have Shadow Dance. You can just... Well, I mean, all the rogue specs have Shadow Dance at this point, but yeah, you can Shadow Dance and just cheap shot everything. It's pretty gross. It's pretty nasty. I think Sub Rogue is definitely a top contender for one of the best melee specs in the game right now. Yeah, Sub Rogue. I do think Fury Warrior is kind of trash. I'm gonna place it, I think under Feral. It's not trash, okay? Let's get that right. It does have one of the best Mortal Strikes in the game outside of Arms Warrior Sharpened Blade. Its Slaughterhouse Mortal Strike from Rampages is pretty disgusting, and it does have some of the highest mobility out of one of the, out of any of the melee DPS. If you think about it, it has 2 charges of charge, it has Heroic Leap, it has Intervene, basically everything that Arms Warrior has. It's pretty gross. The only difference is Fury Warrior can break itself out of roots. Arms Warrior can't, but Arms Warrior can Blade Storm crowd control in general, which is also really strong. Whereas Fury Warrior doesn't have Blade Storm. It doesn't have access to Blade Storm. Now, if Fury Warrior had access to Blade Storm, I actually swear it would be really good, just for the skill cap sense that you can actually get yourself out of crowd control, which is pretty crazy. Well, stop crowd control from happening to begin with. Yeah, so I'm going to put Fury Warrior under Feral. It does have significantly high burst, but after its shield wall is over, it is super squishy. You can definitely die really easily as a Fury Warrior, especially versus setup compositions like RMP or, anything like Augvoke or DK, anything that sets you up and just has your team get bursted down immediately, anything like that, even The Walking Dead, you're going to struggle with. You don't even have Die by the Sword, so you're actually squishier to melee than Arms Warrior 2. Which normally Arms Warrior is pretty tanky versus melee. It's super, like Fury Warrior struggles versus melee. So I'm going to put Fury Warrior there. Now Arms Warrior I am going to put above Rep Paladin in the A+ tier. I do think it's less than Boomy. Boomy is really good. I think a lot of people don't underestimate it. But yeah, Arms Warrior I think is above Ret. It does pretty good damage. It should do more damage in my opinion. I know that's stupid to say because it does a lot of damage to begin with. But there's something about Mortal Strike not hitting as hard as Rising Sun Kick that just doesn't feel right for me. And I'm the Windwalker player. Like, I play Windwalker. So it just doesn't make sense to me that Mortal Strike does, 150k and my Rising Sun Kick does 200k. When I don't do any setup. Like, that's like a Sharpened Blade Mortal Strike, and that's on a good day. You know what I'm saying? And their execute hits for like, I don't know, 60k, which is crazy to me. That's like a blackout kick, So like, realistically, I think Windwalker is just a better Arms Warrior, and I've said this for a while now. Also, Fist of Fury is basically just Die by the Sword on like a 20-second cooldown, which is pretty crazy. So yeah. I think that's kind of how Arms Warrior stands. But with that being said, I still think it is A+ tier for sure. It has Blade Storm, like I said. You can actually Blade Storm twice back-to-back, which is pretty crazy because I think one of their talents is like when you activate Avatar, you Blade Storm at a lesser effectiveness, and then when you activate Blade Storm, you Avatar at a lesser effectiveness. I think I'm right on that. So you can actually do that, which is pretty good because it makes you unpeelable, which is crazy. Also, I think a lot of warriors are running Hurricane now instead of the thing that makes their Mortal Strikes go off during their Blade Storm. So basically what Hurricane does is I think it increases your movement speed by 5% per half a second you're Blade Storming. So I think it stacks up to 30%. And it stacks up your strength. So you can end up with like 30% strength and 30% movement speed after a Blade Storm. So you actually you'll go in, right, and you'll Blade Storm, and you get the mini avatar proc, and then you stack up this Hurricane, and then you pop like your actual avatar, and then you like Sharpen Blade Mortal Strike and hit super hard. Like, that's like your hardest hitting ability right there. So you're gonna stack up a lot of strength that way. You're gonna just smack somebody for like, that's probably like 160k Mortal Strike right there, and that's your biggest damage, which is okay. Now don't get me wrong, that's pretty crazy because you can Sweeping Strikes too. Sweeping Strikes is crazy strong as well. If their team is grouped up, your Sweeping Strikes, you're gonna Mortal Strike for 160k, and then the next person next to them is gonna get hit for 120k. So you're actually cleaving, which is pretty crazy. So Arms Warrior cleave is higher than Windwalkers in my opinion, but maybe not even because Fist of Fury just does so much damage. But either way, yeah, Arms Warrior, pretty solid class. Has a lot of utility with Spell Reflect. Like I said, it has Blade Storm. It has Intervene, which is super strong right now. I have lost games to getting intervened. Like if I'm playing Windwalker, I've gotten people the Touch of Death range, and the warrior intervenes the Touch of Death and lives the Touch of Death because they're not 10% health or 15% health. Lives the Touch of Death. My Touch of Death goes on cooldown, and the person lives at 15% health because they have Intervene. It's crazy. That has happened actually like 4 times. I kid you not. Like at least 4 times to me. So yeah, Arms Warrior has good utility. Moving on to the God class of the game. Well, the God spec. Augmentation Evoker. Guys, the spec, I don't know how it hasn't gotten touched. It's definitely S tier. I personally have been playing a bunch of it. Actually, I think in the background, yeah, you can see this is my Augvoker looking fly right now, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, my Augvoker, I'm not good at Augvoker, and I hit 2k CR like literally yesterday, and I played 2 sessions of queuing 3s. Now, that to be said, I have played a lot of WoW, so I'm not like a new player in any sense, but I'm new to Augmentation Evoker, and I hit 2k in like 2 sessions, which is crazy to me. So Augmentation Evoker I definitely think is high tier. It has super high burst, super high survivability, has a lot of utility, it has a good crowd control, a solid crowd control, has a knockback, has a knock up, it has 2 knockups actually. It has a knock-up into a stun, which is pretty crazy. So it just has so many things, man. It just goes on. The list goes on. Honestly, if you took Augmentation and took away all its healing, it would still be like A tier, A+ tier, which is crazy, right? But the fact that it does all this and heals at the same time, it's like kind of like a mage on steroids. It's like if you took a mage and a Windwalker and like an elemental shaman and just like just crushed them together and said, here's your new class. I think that's basically what Augmentation Evoker is. It's crazy. Devastation Evoker, moving on. Higher burst, in my opinion, I would say it does about 80k DPS consistently throughout the entire match, but it can die in a stun, and that's the only difference really, is the fact that Devastation can die and Augmentation is immortal. So Devastation dies but does more damage. Augmentation is immortal and does just slightly less damage. I wouldn't even say less damage. It does like very minimal less damage. But yeah, Devastation definitely has higher burst potential. I do think Devastation, because of the fact that it dies so easily, I'm gonna place it in B tier, but high B tier. If it could be low A tier even. And honestly, if you play Devastation Evoker Frost DK, or you play like Devastation Evoker Arcane Mage with the right Arcane Mage, shout out to Cubsy, crazy. And Chun-Li. Chun is insane on Devastation Evoker. But yeah, I think if you play Devastation Evoker at like a high tier, you'll have no problem being like A+ tier. But the average person, you're probably going to struggle. You're going to die in a lot of stuns because you're not going to pre-renewing Blaze. You're not going to pre-shield wall. Not do anything like that. So I think realistically, yeah, I think Devastation's B tier. But Augmentation, that's the spec for you guys. I'm telling you. You just walk in, press Ebonmite, you just chill, you press Breath of the Eons, then you press Upheaval, and then you press Tip the Scales into a Fire Breath, then you press Eruption, Fire, Flame, what was that? Living Flame, and then an Eruption. Disgusting. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the easiest thing ever, I'm telling you. Speaking of Augmentation Evoker, I think I'm going to do a guide on it soon. So if you want to see a Augmentation Evoker guide, please make sure to hit the subscription button below. And yeah, you'll see that pretty soon, I'm pretty sure. Moving on to Preservation Evoker. This spec is actually pretty good. I think it's super underrated. I do think it is high A tier. I'm going to place it there, right under Restoration Druid. Now, depending on what you're fighting, Preservation Evoker is better than Resto Druid. But right now, Resto Druid just does so much throughput healing that it actually makes things feel immortal. So I think the fact that you can make your teammates feel immortal and make them feel more confident and they just run in and do more damage, Resto Druid's better. Preservation has this ability, Preservation has so much damage that, like, your team can feel vulnerable because you're just going to be doing so much damage. I know that sounds dumb, but I swear Preservation Evoker actually does that much damage. You can hit Fire Breath for 100k non-crit. Sorry, I have like a hair in my throat. But yeah, Preservation Evoker, you can yeah hit it like 100k non-crit Fire Breath into like a Living Flame for like another 100k, which is pretty nice. Off of like your Deep Breath for probably like another 100k, so all by yourself, which is crazy, right? So I think I think Preservation's pretty sick. It does a lot of damage from a healer spec for sure. Frost DK. Now I play Frost DK. I love Frost DK. But I think it's just in the wrong place, man. I think it's just like, it does a lot of damage. It's super squishy. Pretty much the same survivability as Unholy DK if you think about it. But its consistent damage is just out the window. If you're not like killing in your burst windows, you're like, if people know how to stop your burst, like if they CC your burst the whole burst, you actually do no damage the whole game. Because every single time you have burst, if they CC you, it's game over. You just do no damage. Outside of your burst, you're actually hitting like a wet noodle. Like you might hit a 50k every now and then. Like you might hit a 50k obliterate every now and then. And that's crazy, man. You shouldn't have to play your class around your burst, in my opinion. Like for instance, Augmentation Evoker, right? Now I'm just putting this as an example. Augmentation Evoker, best spec in the game, in my opinion. Can hit an upheaval for 150k, non-crit, outside of cooldowns, every like 30 seconds, right? Frost DK can hit an obliterate for maybe 60k outside of cooldowns, and it's just RNG, right? Like I might hit 30k constantly, and then my Frost Strike might hit for 50k. So, like, I might be able to do 50k damage. It's like, you actually have no solid burst potential. You have to play with a class that has super high burst, like Frost DK with, like, an Arms Warrior, or Frost DK with an Augmentation Evoker, or Frost DK with Marksmanship Hunter might work, or Frost DK with a Devastation Evoker is probably your best bet as a Frost DK. Now, with that being said, as the average player, I do think Frost DK is easier to play than Unholy Death Knight, but it is harder to gain rating than an Unholy Death Knight. Because once you start to learn the class, Unholy Death Knight just substantially increases, whereas Frost DK you kind of just crawl. There's not like a steady, like, oh man, I just figured out the craziest burst rotation. It's like, no, like, you already know the craziest burst rotation. It's Frost Strike, Obliterate, Frost Strike, Obliterate, Frost Strike. Like, Unholy DK, it's like, oh my god, this all makes more sense now. Like, okay, I apply my dots, I press Scourge Strike, now they hit way harder because they're ticking faster. Like, I'm getting it. Like, I dial it in. Like, you can do more. But Frost DK, it's like, you just do your burst, and it's super easy to do, and you either kill something, or you don't, or you get CC'd your entire burst and do nothing. So I'm actually going to place Frost DK, I think, in B tier, but under Assassination Rogue. Now, Frost DK does have its benefits, though, but I do think it's the worst DPS spec in the entire game. And that's as a Frost DK player that hit top 100 in North America in Solo Shuffle last season. So, do what you want with that. Unholy DK, I would say, is probably high A tier. I'm going to put it above every other DPS spec in A+ tier. I meant to say A+ tier. It does significant amount of damage. If you play with an Augmentation Evoker, you do about 100k DPS consistently if you're good at Unholy DK. You sometimes will play your Silence. You have a Blind, you have a Stun, you have a Silence, you have 2 Death Grips, you have a Ranged Kick, you have a Pet Kick, you have a Pet Stun. Yeah, they have a lot of utility. They also have AMS, which is crazy strong right now because there's a lot of casters playing. You also have Anti-Magic Zone, which is also really good. I mean, I'll say Frost DK also has this. So it's like not crazy good, but it is good. It's really good. But on top of everything else that Unholy DK has, I think Unholy DK belongs in A+ tier. It is just a really solid spec overall right now. Probably one of the best, if not the best, pet class specialization in the game right now. Shout out to the Ghoul homeboy. Now, Fire Mage. Fire Mage is probably the highest burst mage spec. Man, it's hard to say, right? Because Arcane can do like 300k. If you get a crit with Arcane Barrage at like low health, you can hit for like 250k, which is really nice. It's just like an execute, 30%. I think it's pretty good, though. I'm going to say Fire Mage belongs in A+ tier, and I'm going to put it above Preservation Evoker. Now, I am going to say right now, guys, I I know I put Resto Druid in an A+ tier, and I'm standing by this, but I'm just gonna say, I think I'm kind of just like wild carding it. I think it's this tier, but it may not be. I just think it is, though. I think it's just at that level. So yeah, bear with me on Resto Druid. Resto Druid's a wild card right now, but I do think Fire Mage belongs above Preservation Evoker. Does super high damage. Has obviously Polymorph. It has Cauterize into Ice Block, which is also really good because you can't just die. I mean, you can just die, but you can't just die. Has Greater Invis, which is like a secondary, survivability. Also, something you guys can do as Fire Mages is if you proc Cauterize, instead of immediately Ice Blocking, if you have Alter Time up, you can Alter Time, and if you're away from like enemies, you can Alter Time at the proc level of Cauterize, and then as you tick down with Cauterize, Alter Time back and get your health back up, right? So you can save yourself your Ice Block if you have Alter Time up and you're away from enemies. If you're near enemies and you proc Cauterize, you're going to want to Ice Block because they can kill you really easily. So yeah, that's just a tip. But yeah, Fire Mage is pretty good. I would say it's pretty solid. I think Frost Mage is also really good. I don't think it's as good as Fire Mage, and the reason being is all of its spells that do a lot of damage, Ray of Frost, Glacial, are heavy cast time spells, and there's so many kicks in the game, so many ways to stop it. Like, I can stop it with just like a knockback, or like a clone, or like a, any form of CC, stun, this, that. So, and Rare Frost is a minute cooldown, so it's kind of sucky to lose your biggest burst ability outside of Glacial Spike to just like air, basically. Now, I will say Glacial or Ice Lances hit for like 80k, so that alone will carry your damage pretty heavily. But the problem is when you're casting these heavy, heavy cooldown cast time abilities, if you get kicked on them as a Frost Mage, your one like go-to defensive is locked out, so you're in danger. Whereas with Fire Mage, when you get kicked on your burst, you're not in danger, and as Arcane Mage, when you get kicked on your burst, you're not in danger because you can also Ice Block. So at any point in time, as the other specs, you can Ice Block, whereas as Frost Mage specifically, if you get kicked on any of your damage and you're like at half health, it's very scary. So you have to play super safe, and you also have to play with a lot of like control in your mind. I'm like, okay, this person might be 50% health, but I'm also 50% health, and they have a CS up. So I can't go for my burst here, whereas a Fire Mage can go for the burst there. So I'm gonna place Fire Mage or Frost Mage in A tier, like actual A tier, but at the top of A tier. It could also probably be a little bit above Outlaw depending on the player. I think if you are a low tier Frost Mage and a low tier Outlaw Rogue, your Frost Mage is probably better than the Outlaw Rogue. But if you are a rank 1 Outlaw Rogue, shout out to like probably, I don't know, who's a rank 1 Outlaw? Calvish, of course. We talk about Calvish, right? And then we talk about like Aegis. I think Calvish is probably just getting in better standings just because of his class, right? At least from what I'm seeing. Now, if Aegis is playing Fire Mage, maybe his class carries him versus Calvish. I don't know. But, they're all relatively close. I would just say that Frost is worse than Fire Mage. Arcane Mage is very, very strong. It's super good versus melee because Arcane Barrage applies a, 60% slow and gives you a, I think, 50% movement speed increase, and it's instant cast and has no cooldown. Arcane Barrage also acts as an execute that does way more damage than actual execute, like way more damage, which makes 0 sense. Blizzard, if you're going to make execute do 60k damage for warriors, you need to rename the ability to like toy hammer attack or something like that, where it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't do a lot of damage, so there's no point in calling it execute. Arcane Barrage is an execute. That is a manly execute. That's like Shadow Burn back in Mop. You know what I'm saying? That's like 300k straight to your face. Bam! That's an execute. So yeah, Arcane Mage is pretty good. Does super high burst. Plays really well with other high tier classes like Windwalker Monk. Plays really well with like Augmentation Evoker. Plays really well with Sub Rogue. So all these high tier specializations in the game, Arcane Mage is playing really well with right now. So I think Arcane Mage is probably equal to Fire Mage. I'm going to put it on the lower side of Fire Mage because I think Fire Mage takes less skill to play than Arcane Mage. But I do think a high tier Arcane Mage will probably outperform a Fire Mage. Maybe. It depends on what comps they're playing against. If they're playing against like a melee cleave, Arcane Mage will outperform the Fire Mage. If you're playing against other casters, I think the Fire Mage will outperform the Arcane Mage. it's all up in the air on what you're playing against. But overall, I think Fire and Arcane are like right next to each other. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, guys? Moving on to Holy Priest. Holy Priest is one of the best healers in the game still. It does suck on mana, in my opinion. You rely on Mastery because your Mastery ticks like for heals over time. If you don't play your like high Mastery, you're going to run out of mana really quickly. Holy Priest does have pretty high burst damage with Imperial Blaze and Holy Fire spam, which is pretty crazy. Has really good crowd control with Chastise Stun into a Fear. You can also Chastise into a Mind Control and run people off the edge. You could do crazy stuff like that. You have Mind Games sometimes if you're playing that build, which is pretty good. I'm definitely going to put Holy Priest above Preservation Evoker. I think I'm going to put it above Resto Druid just to be safe. But I do think Resto Druid is really good, guys. Resto Druid might even be S tier. It depends. I need more research. I need to do more research, guys. It's only been like 3 days since the patch, right? So let's be honest. We need to do more research on Resto Druid. But I think Holy Priest is good. I think having the AoE, instant cast AoE CC is always going to be good. You also have Fade, which is really good. You have Angel Form, which is crazy good, especially because specific classes play into that better than not, I will say. So like if you're playing against an Affliction Lock, you can Fade Dispel, and the Dispel negative effect, so like the silence and that really big hit of like 200k, you actually fade, so like it doesn't actually hit you. If you're playing Phase Shift, you have to be playing the Phase Shift Honor Talent. Don't do this if you're not playing Phase Shift. You will kill yourself, literally. So yeah, just Phase Shift, Dispel, you have that every 20 seconds, which is crazy annoying to deal with as an Affliction Warlock. Also, you have Angel Form Mass Dispel. You can Fade Mass Dispel, but it's a very close timing. I actually have a macro on my Priest where it's cast Fade and cast Mass Dispel on the same thing, and I click it, and it instantly goes off because it's like cast at my cursor. And the only way you get that off is if you don't have Cursive Tongues on you. If the Warlock puts Cursive Tongues on you, you will still kill yourself with the Mass Dispel, so do not do that. But yes, Holy Priest is good. Holy Priest is really good versus a lot of things, but it's really good versus Affliction Lock just because of that alone. But yeah, Holy Priest is really good. Also, Ray of Hope is also really good. And people forget about it all the time, but like it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. You just toss it on somebody and toss a Holy Word Serenity into it, and the Holy Word Serenity heals for like 400k. So it's like you kind of have like a lay on hands on a 1.5 minute cooldown if you play it right. Discipline Priest. I actually think Discipline Priest isn't bad, and the only reason I think of this is because I've been watching a lot of Baker Ice. Shout out to Baker Ice. I know you see me in the chat. I'm always talking about, you know, playing Windwalker for you, but you're like, man, I don't heal Windwalkers. I think that's BS, brother. I think that's BS. You haven't played with my Windwalker. Let's be honest. But either way, Baker Ice, shout out to you. You've changed my mind on Disc Priest. I think Disc Priest is actually pretty good. I do think it is, well, I wouldn't say pretty good. It's still like the worst healer spec in the game by far, but it, but I do think, I mean, it could be maybe better than Resto Shaman with the right composition. I think Disc Priest plays really well actually with Unholy DK, Augmentation Evoker, no cap because of Dark Arc is crazy. PI is also crazy. Power Infusion, right up there. You have Pain Suppression. 2 charges of Pain Suppression, which is crazy good. You have Powered Barrier, which is also really good. You have Life Swap, which is really good. The problem with with Discipline Priest is your heals just suck. Like, they actually just don't heal for anything. So, like, you have a lot of ways to navigate through doing, like, getting bursted on and stuff like that. But topping somebody off as a Discipline Priest seems like a chore. It seems really hard. Like, you could free cast a solid 3 flash heals and not top somebody off, which is crazy to me. So, let's be honest. Disc Priest, I'm gonna put you... should I put it above Devastation? I think I'm gonna put it above Assassination, but under Devastation. I know. I'm sorry, guys. Let's be honest. Let's be honest here with ourselves, though. Disc Priest, I want it to be good, but I just think it's bad. I just don't think it's that good. I think it's good in its right comps. You could probably play RMP with it pretty well, like Sub Rogue, Fire Mage, RMP probably smashes with a Disc Priest. Or Cupid Cleave also probably smashes with a Disc Priest. Even maybe Ret Warrior. But, guys, you could play Ret Warrior with a Holy Priest and be way better off. You would just heal for way more. Now, I will say Pain Suppression is an amazing cooldown to have on your team. But that's the end of it. Disc Priest, I don't think is that great. Shadow Priest is good. Shadow Priest is really good. And it's being underplayed right now. I swear Shadow Priest was being played a lot at Season 2 launch, and then it's like suddenly declined and declined and declined. And I have a feeling it's just because I haven't put out another guide for Shadow Priest. So maybe I got to toss one of those bad boys out here, because I'm telling you, Shadow Priest is pretty saucy right now. You know what I'm saying? You play the Mind Spike Insanity build, and all you have to do really is literally you cast out your damage, cast out Mind Games. You get kicked on Mind Games. Oh, I just Mind Spike Insanity. Oh, I don't get kicked on Mind Games. Psh, golden. I Mind Games into a Void Torrent. Oh, Void Torrent get kicked? That's fine, ladies and gentlemen. I just Mind Spike Insanity. It doesn't matter that I get kicked, which is what's crazy about Shadow Priest. Now, I will say, it did get a nerf to Desperate Prayer. The cooldown reduction version. The cooldown reduction of it is getting nerfed, or it got nerfed. I haven't played my Shadow Priest in a little bit, I will admit. But it is pretty disgusting still, even after the nerf of Desperate Prayer. So I think Shadow Priest belongs definitely above Frost Mage. I'm going to put it under Boomkin, because I think Boomkin having Bear Form and Frenzied Regen alone makes it tanky enough to compete with Shadow Priest's tankiness. But it does higher burst than Shadow Priest, maybe. But Shadow Priest plays with like certain classes better than Boomy does. I think they're pretty equal. They're probably like the closest caster specs in terms of fairness, in my opinion. Moving on to Mistweaver Monk, I think Mistweaver Monk is pretty crazy. It's pretty solid. Mistweaver Monk does pretty good healing now, and it got the mana cheat change on Tuesday, and it actually never runs out of mana. I've seen people talking about it actually out manas Holy Paladins, guys. That's crazy, because Holy Paladins have 2 mana bars if you're playing it right. 2 mana bars, basically. I'm telling you, Mistweaver is pretty crazy. I don't know where I'm going to put it, because its healing throughput isn't as good. You know, I'm going to be honest. If you're fighting against a lot of Unholy DK Augvokers, Mistweaver is actually not too bad into it, because Revival or Restoral, depending on what you're playing, actually kind of counteracts its damage really well. Because, you know, you get gripped into the blind, and then the Augvoker flies over, and you all get stunned. If you're playing Restoral, you just Restoral, and now your whole team is immune to taking magic damage. Actually, I think they're just immune. I don't know. For like a minute or a second and a half, and you also burst heal everybody, and that whole go is gone, right? And now the Augvoker doesn't have its Deep Breath or Breath of Eons for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So it lines up pretty well with Revival / Restoral. So I think Mistweaver is kind of low-key the answer to Augvoker Unholy DK. But that's like the only answer it has. I think versus like setup comps like RMP and stuff, it's going to be significantly harder for you to deal with. You have no way to stop polymorphs outside of just paralyzing or kicking a polymorph by chance. Stuff like that, like anything like that, you're gonna struggle with. I don't know how Mistweaver feels into dot comps. I do think Revival also is really good into Affliction Lock, because you can AoE dispel all of its dots during its highest burst moments, which is really good. It's also really good versus Boomkin. It's good versus casters. So I think Mistweaver is good the better casters are getting. And now with Resto Druid being good, I think we'll start seeing Elemental Shaman, Warlock, Resto Druid more often, LSD. And so I think with that, Mistweaver might be on the rise again, which you might even see Elemental Shaman, Warlock, Mistweaver, which is also pretty crazy. So that's also a pretty cool comp. But I think we'll start seeing that more often nowadays, at least if some people start playing Elemental Shaman, which I will also put out another guide for, because I like guides. And I think Elemental Shaman is crazy, and it's one of my OG classes. I know a lot of people subscribe to me from my Elemental Shaman guides, so I'm sorry I haven't put out a lot for that. But yeah, I'll be back on the Elemental Shaman soon for you guys, I promise. I am going to put it here. I think I'm going to put it under... No, I'm going to put it above Arms Warrior. What am I talking about? I'm going to put it above Arms Warrior. It's definitely not the best healer, but I don't think any of the healers are bad besides Discipline Priest. And even Resto Shaman doesn't feel that bad right now. Especially because, like I said, casters are getting better, and Resto Shaman plays really well into casters. But yeah, so I think Mistweaver is up here. Windwalker, instant S tier. I play this class a lot. Does super high burst for no reason. Well, not really no reason. It does super high burst. It just does it. There is a reason. It's because it has a bunch of modifiers for its Rising Sun kick damage, and its Fist of Fury damage is crazy high. I mean, I've had literally over 100k ticks on my Fist of Fury alone. It ticks 4 times or 5 times during Fist of Fury, and then you Rising Sun kick after for 200k. It's disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. So Windwalker, if you want to play a really high burst melee DPS, you need to look no further than Windwalker monks. Not only do they have some of the highest burst in the game, they also have some of the highest mobility in the game, which is really strong as well. I will say I struggle a lot as Windwalker versus mages. I can't fight mages as Windwalker monk. I don't know what it is. I need a lot more practice. Aegis, if you happen to watch this, or if anybody knows Aegis and wants to send this video to him and have him skip to the part where I say Windwalker, I need help versus mages, shout him out, because I want to duel him over and over and over and over and over again until I start to get the grasp of what to do versus mages, because I can't for my life play against mages, and I don't know what it is. I just get absolutely destroyed. The only thing is if I get to the mage and they're playing Shimmer, I demolish them. And if I don't get to the mage and they're not playing, or if they're not playing Shimmer and I get to them in leg sweep and they blink, I can paralyze them, reattach to them, and they can't move. Now versus a good mage, they'll blink and then alter time, and then they'll alter time back at another blink, and then I will have nothing left because I'll have to deal with roots and I'll have to deal with polymorph. So it's just really hard for Windwalker to deal with mage. So yeah, that's the one thing I will say, is if you're playing Windwalker, expect to have a hard time fighting against good mage players. A very frustrating time. So yeah, Windwalker, very good though. Resto Shaman, it's probably the second worst healer in the game, but it is good. I would say it's here, right above Pharaoh. Now, Resto Shaman has some of the best cooldowns out of the healers, in my opinion, with the fact that it has the ability to reset its totems. So you can like healing stream, healing stream, and then you can Stonewall totem. Then you can reset the healing stream and Stonewall totem, so you can technically have an extra healing stream after those 2 healing streams. Then you can healing tide totem. Then you can Stonewall again, and then also you have Ascendance. You have your Nature Swiftness, which is a really big burst heal. It's kind of like a lay on hands for Resto Shaman. Just stack Mastery. Again, it's another healer where you stack Mastery for sure. Actually, a lot of healers right now stack Mastery. I think almost every one of them, besides Discipline Priest. And maybe Mistweaver. I don't know. I haven't played Mistweaver. But everything else stacks Mastery. So yeah, Resto Shaman isn't bad. And it's good versus casters. So if you're playing into a lot of casters, Resto Shaman's definitely not a bad choice. I do think it struggles to heal through heavy melee cleaves. So if like TSG is just stomping you over and over again, or Ret Warrior, you're going to kind of struggle as a Resto Shaman, in my opinion. Unless if you happen to get some really good groundings on like Hodges, and like you get some really good stuff like that, or grounds on Death Grips, anything like that. If you're really good at preemptively using your grounding totem to stop stuff from hitting you, you're going to struggle as Resto Shaman versus those classes. But yeah, Resto Shaman's not bad. Elemental Shaman did get a buff in the patch prior to this current patch, which is 10.1.7. The patch prior, it got a buff to its Lava Burst damage, and there's some crazy one-shot Lava Burst builds out there. I'm going to put out an elemental guide on how to do those one-shots and how to deal with those one-shots, because Elemental Shaman is really good, but is also really bad once people know how to play against you. Now, the trick is playing at a level where they know how to play against you, and you're making it impossible for them to deal with you, right? Which is how I was playing Frost Death Knight. It's like, yeah, people know how to play into Frost Death Knight because, like, okay, they have a 1-minute cooldown on their burst. You just crowd control it, and it's game over. But if you can learn how to adapt and become that person that becomes super annoying to deal with as a Frost DK or an Elemental Shaman, you're gonna thrive. So yeah, I'm gonna put Elemental Shaman in the same tier as Boomkin. I do think it's a little bit better than Shadow Priest right now, just because of the compositions that are being played right now. Having Grounding Totem is pretty crazy. The amount of off healing that Healing Stream provides and Earth Shield provides as Elemental Shaman alone is crazy, because it's kind of like passive healing. You don't have to worry about it, whereas Shadow Priest, you have to worry about healing your teammates if you need to. I will say Void Shift is crazy, but it's only like a 1-a-game type of thing. You have Burrow. You do have Earth Grab, which is pretty crazy. You have Capstone if you take it, which is crazy. You also have one of the only like semi-undispellable curses, CCs in the game, which is Hex, which is a curse, which means mages Resto Druids and Resto Shamans can dispel it. Or sorry, Mages, Druids, and Shamans can dispel curses, which is the only classes in the game that can dispel Hex. So if you're playing against Unholy DK, Augmentation Evoker, and a Priest, you can freely Hex anybody, and every single time you Hex, it's going to be full unless if they trinket out of it or it breaks. So you need to utilize your Hex a lot more if you're playing Elemental Shaman. But just so you know, Hex is crazy good, and it's a 15-second cooldown. It's kind of insane in my opinion, but it's always been insane, and people just never utilize it to its full potential. They accidentally break it. Hex is super strong. Yeah, Enhancement Shaman, also pretty good. I think a lot of people got scared after the burst of Enhancement Shaman got nerfed, but its consistent damage got buffed during that patch, so it's actually pretty solid. I would say if you're an Enhancement Shaman, watch Saul, first off. He's crazy good. And second, if you're an Enhancement Shaman, I think you're probably going to be like A+ tier. I do think you're above Ret Paladin in my opinion, purely because the utility you provide is more universal helpful than Ret Paladins. Ret Paladins is good versus other melee. It's also pretty good versus casters, but it's not amazing versus casters. I would say Enhancement is better versus casters than Ret Paladin, in my opinion. Also, you have Purge, which Purge alone is kind of disgusting. It's really good. So yeah, I'm going to say Enhancement Shaman is A+ tier. The only thing that Enhancement Shamans struggle with really badly right now especially is if you kite them really well. If you can kite them really well and root spam them, just spam roots on Enhancement Shamans. They will struggle so hard. Spam root on an Enhancement Shaman, spam CC on an Enhancement Shaman, and then when they start giving up on you, that's when you just start hammering them with damage. But yeah, Enhancement Shamans struggle with getting kited because they don't have a lot of gap closers. They have Feral Lunge, they have Ghost Dual Form, which is okay. It's like kind of trash. And then they have Spirit Walk, which Spirit Walk is like a minute cooldown. So, you know, a minute cooldown on your mobility, your one mobility that actually matters, it's kind of sucky. We got Affliction Lock. Affliction Lock stonks are definitely up. I've recently played my Affliction Lock, and I think it's actually a lot of fun. I think Oblivion is super fun, super fun to play around. It's like kind of like if Void Torrent had an evil twin. It's very similar to Void Torrent. But yeah, if you like playing Shadow Priest and you like the Void Torrent mainly build of Shadow Priest, I would definitely try out Affliction Lock. I think Affliction Lock's really good. It's good at rotting. And again, with Resto Druids kind of peeking their head into the meta maybe, I do think Affliction Lock stonks go up because they're good versus Resto Druids and they're good with Resto Druids. So I am actually going to put Affliction Lock this high in A+ tier. I'm going to put it above Mage, which is crazy because Mage is very good right now. But I think Affliction Lock having spammable Fear, having ridiculous amount of damage, just throughput damage, and it also has some of the best survivability out of all the casters in my opinion, because a lot of its damage is just instant cast outside of like Unstable Affliction obviously, but you're just kind of instant casting, and then like when you just drain soul from max range, and like if you get kicked it's okay because you can still Dark Pact. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I think Affliction Lock's definitely solid right now, so I would say Affliction Lock's up there. Demo Lock is very good as well. Demonology Warlock has a Mortal Strike effect. It does kind of get crushed if you train a Demo Warlock, like a lot harder than the other specs in my opinion. I think Demo Warlock kind of needs a little bit of help. Maybe, I know there's a proc right now in the game that allows you to get instant cast Dreadstalkers, but maybe if it procced as much as when like Destro Locks, when you're training a Destro Lock and they get Incinerate procs and you can Incinerate instantly, Demo should probably have the equivalent with their Dreadstalkers, in my opinion, because I feel like training a Demo Lock is just so easy. It's like you just crush them. The only thing they can do is Mortal Coil one target. They can Shadow Fury. They can Fear. They can play Howl of Terror. But, like, I mean, their pet has a good amount of crowd control, too. So they do have some crowd control options, but really, Demo Lock struggles heavily getting targeted compared to the other Warlock specs. So they definitely need a little help, specifically versus melee. So I'm going to say Demo Warlock. It does significantly high burst. I'm still going to place it, I think I'm going to place it under Frost Mage. Now, that's not to say that Demo Warlock isn't good. I think Demo Warlock is crazy. I'm actually going to place Marksman up here. I think Marksman's better than these two. Marksman's really good right now. Might even be better than that. I think that. But yeah, I think Demon Warlock is pretty solid. But I just think it kind of gets ran over by a lot of things. It's really easy to just overtake and just stomp on. Just Destrolock, also very good. I don't know if you guys watch Bualock, but he's I think I said that right. Maybe Bualock on YouTube. He's a really good Destrolock. He's been having a lot of these fun videos out where he stacks a bunch of master and his chaos bolts do like 260k, 270k damage. That kind of stuff is pretty ridiculous. So yeah, Destrolock as the last specialization on our list. I think we're gonna put it here, right under marksman. Yeah, I think that's where we're gonna put it. It does have some of the best crowd control, in my opinion, in the game, just because it has the Bane of Havoc, and you can just like, or what I think it's called Bane of Havoc, or it's just called Havoc maybe, but you can just, you know, Mortal Coil 2 targets, you can Fear 1 target, you can Shadow Fury 1 target, you can use your Infernal Stun, which Infernal Stun is off the stun DR. It's one of the only things in the game that's actually off stun DR. It's really good. So yeah, and it plays really well with things like Sub Rogue. It plays well with Unholy Decay. It probably would play well with Augmentation Evoker even. You could probably play Destrolock like, you know, Shadow Priest. You can play Destrolock Mage. There's a lot of things you can play with a Destrolock right now. A lot of things. Windwalker Destrolock is also a really solid comp. Windwalker Destrolock Holy Paladin, you're set. Solid. But yeah, this is my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's super long, I know. I really appreciate you guys watching this. I like to go in depth, though, with these tier lists, and I like to describe them as much as possible. I do think this is as balanced as possible, though. I think if you are playing at the highest tier, this is pretty much what you're expecting. And if you're playing at the lowest tier, this is also kind of what you're expecting. I don't think anything really varies too much. I do think at a low-tiered BM Hunter might be like S tier to low tier players, because it's super easy to do damage as a BM Hunter, but it's also super easy to counteract BM Hunter's damage once you understand that its pets are doing most of the damage, and you can actually like root their pets and stop a lot of their damage just by CCing their pets at the same time during your goes. So like as a Frost Mage, which normally struggles versus Hunters, a lot of the times I'm just using like Frost Nova, or I'm using like my Ice Nova, stuff like that on the Hunter pets, and it's stopping a lot of their damage. So yeah, definitely play around with this a little bit, but I think this is actually a pretty solid tier list. I also included the tanks in this tier list, which normally I just place in garbage tier, all of them. I hope you guys enjoyed that part, but yeah, this is what we're looking at. So I hope you guys enjoy this. If you did, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to like the video, write a comment down below saying how much you love me. Also, feel free to join the Discord in the description. Feel free to join and follow my stream. I'll be streaming Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, Sundays sometimes. So Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, come catch me at www.twitch.tv/GrimlockMMO. I will see you guys there, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Peace.